Welcome to our next session, Fireside Chat with Robin Gentry McGee, founder of Functional Formularies, with our moderator, Pamela Cone, the market director for Aviatra Dayton. And in this Fireside Chat, we will have Pam, who will be interviewing Robin, who will be talking about the role of medtech as CEO. And her advice. You will be joined by moderator Pam Cone, again, Dayton Market Director for Aviatra Accelerators, which you'll learn more about. And so quickly, a quick reminder, please submit your questions in the Q&A section of the app. So you would navigate to the home screen, click the session Q&A, and then select this session, the Fireside Chat. And then from there, you can submit your questions to the moderator. So we're going to jump into the amazing conversation between Pamela and Robin, which is a video, and then we'll jump right into Q&A. So enjoy this session and this conversation. Your questions to the
moderator. Hi, Robin.
Hi, Pam. How are you?
I'm doing great. I am so excited to have this time to speak with you and have this conversation, because I've had the pleasure of working with you. Full disclosure to everyone that's watching, I worked with you for 2 years at Functional Formularies as your marketing coordinator. And I will say that that was one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. So I'm a little biased, but I'm happy to have this conversation because I want to really share, you to have opportunity to share parts of your business and your journey that other people may not have the inside like I did. I had a front row seat for a lot of it. So I'm grateful for this time, for you to be able to share your journey that other entrepreneurs will be able to learn. So that's mainly what I wanted to talk to you about today. And I know you've shared about the inception of your business, quite extensively with others. But one of the things that really impressed me was out of this very personal experience with your father's injury, that through that, it was not expected, but indirectly that led to really you revolutionizing a whole entire industry. Do you mind sharing how that inception evolved into bringing a product such as yours to market?
Sure. As far as the beginning of the journey, or?
Well, I would just say when you knew past it being out of love for your father and concern for your father, to the point where you thought this is something that can really support so many people.
Absolutely, yes. So after in researching how to do this for my father, as well as spending a lot of time in many facilities as far as hospitals and rehabs, et cetera, with him, I did see so many people who were struggling to understand why their loved ones were not doing well. And sometimes nutrition was a huge part of that, and sometimes nutrition was or could be a piece of the puzzle. So, it was after I had a front row seat to this journey with my father, and understood the power of food on a very, very deep, very personal level. Then along the way, I felt equally as bad for others as I did for myself, my family, my father, what we were going through. I mean, anytime you're exposed to someone who's suffering and dying, I don't think that you can't internalize that and feel it on some level. And I did, and I felt it very deeply. So that is what led me to go down the road of try and figure out how to commercialize this product to get it to market, because I believed that it could make a vast difference in the outcome. of many, many people. And as I had seen with my father, and that proved to be true.
Yes.
99.9% of the time, and you were there, the same stories. You know, I saw it with my father. Every single person, whether it was a child or an adult that used the formula, same stories over and over. I mean, the emails would pour in, the phone calls. You saved my loved one's life. You saved, I mean, so much so, as you know, some of these emails and social media posts that people would make, we had to take them down because they were making claims that you're not allowed to make, according to the FDA.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that is, it was totally out of love and compassion for humanity.
Absolutely. You know, when we talk about entrepreneurs, it is that you've recognized the need, like you did, not only personally for your family, but your father, but also for people suffering like your father was, and you endeavored and met it. And that's the definition of an entrepreneur. But at the same time, another thing that impressed me was you lived the lifestyle. So it wasn't just you created organic products. For people who don't know, it was organic feeding formula for people who are tube fed, organic formula, all whole food, all organic. And so with that, it was not just, it was a trend, but it was your lifestyle. You want to speak to that for a little bit and share?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's been my lifestyle for a very, very long time. And I think it started really early because both sets of my grandparents were farmers, and we lived in Tennessee when I was young. And what is considered living off the grid or self-sufficient, you know, being self-sufficient now, which many people understand and many people are striving to do, it's how I grew up. For the most part. I mean, I don't think we had electricity until I was 7 years old. But we grew most of our own food. They had livestock, they had vegetable gardens. Some things were purchased at the store. But in cooking, everything was made from scratch. I remember my grandmother would get up at 4 a.m. every morning and make this huge breakfast for my grandfather, who would then go out in the fields. And then she would clean up from breakfast, or we would clean up, and then she would start making lunch, so everything was prepared. Everything was prepared fresh. And so that was instilled in me in a very early age. And then just, I think when I was about 18, I just started going down the road to reading about nutrition and the health and the difference that good nutrition can make. I stopped eating sugar. I stopped eating processed food that I junk food like everybody else. But, it really just my journey and what I consumed in books, it really had a huge impact. And that was that's how I lived my whole life, essentially.
Absolutely. I know that a lot of people start a business maybe because they see a trend or they see an open in the market for that business. But speak to how important of a value that is for a business owner, that has been their life experience, or it comes out of their knowledge, opposed to just taking something on. In that regard.
Sure. I think there's a difference, and I can't say either is right or wrong. But it's just a very different journey, because obviously if you create something out of need, it's very different than creating something because it's a good idea, it's been proven a good idea, and you're bringing it to market. I think that for me personally, it was the emotional attachment to the product that I carry to this day. And I also feel like it was my life's work, honestly. I feel like everything that I've studied, every experience that I had in my life, all of the jobs that I had led me, gave me the knowledge to lead me to developing this thing that had never been done before in the history of the world, like me. Who knew? I mean, I just think it's passion, which gives you an endless amount of drive.
Absolutely. I think it fueled you the entire moment, and it resonated so with me, even from applying for the position, that I thought I have to meet this woman. And so, and our interview lasted, as you know, what, 2 hours or more?
Exactly.
But just having that as a part of your journey, I think caused you to do something, as you said, that had never been done, caused you to revolutionize an industry. And I felt that way, that it was your life's work, because we call liquid hope and baby nourish your children, you
That's
know.
right.
And so, but in that, it speaks volumes in a matter of passion, in a matter of putting your whole self into and being successful, so much so in an industry that you were committed to the journey of researching to bring it to market. So a lot of times we have an idea, or a business person have an idea, and then they want to go to business the next day. But yours actually was a process. Can you share with us a little bit about the research and development, a little bit to help some entrepreneurs who are in that phase?
Sure. Yeah. And I knew nothing of the industry when I started walking through it, but I, I just spent, number one, a lot of time creating the product, which took, it wasn't in the scheme of things, it was a minimal amount of time. I think it was probably 3 months from the time that I decided that I needed to do this until I actually had something that was viable. And that in itself was very challenging, because from working with me how teeny tiny a feeding tube is. So, you have to get a lot of nutrition in a little tiny tube. And that is solely the reason that all the products on the market that had existed before I launched my formulas had the first ingredients were corn syrup and sugar, because it's calories, right? So, somewhere along the line, registered dietitians were trained to just look at the nutritionals set forth by, the dietary guidelines for America. And as long as products meet in that category, meet a certain protein, carb, fat content, and the calorie profile is, then you're good to go. And so one of the challenges, because I refuse to use sugar, and part of the issue with manufacturing of a product like mine is when you're trying to take it from something that you make fresh to a shelf-stable product. What I didn't know, and what I found out, that the proteins swell in the process. So I hired a couple of food scientists to try and help me, figure out how to manufacture this, staying within the guidelines that I had set forth as far as the purity of the product. Yes. So I worked with them for over a year, and they couldn't achieve it without adding sugar of, some sort. They encouraged me to use a natural sweetener, such as honey or agave or something, and I said no. And so I then went back to the kitchen and continued to work on it, probably for 3 or 4 more years. And I finally figured it out. Like, literally, I figured out how to get 400 plus calories and 12 ounces of food and a teeny tiny, going through a teeny tiny channel. So that was the first challenge. And then it took me probably another couple years to find a manufacturer, because first of all, again, because I had no knowledge of the industry, I had no clue what the process was to create a shelf-stable product without any preservatives in it. Yes. And so that seemed to be a very, very well-kept industry secret. Well-kept. And so I finally figured that out. And I then called a manufacturing company. I found, and there were only, I think at that time, and probably still not a lot more, like maybe 4 or 5 of these manufacturers in the country. And most of them were government contracted manufacturers who did MREs and emergency preparedness, military rations. And the first one that I called up, lovely gentleman that I spoke with, and he had to go talk to his team, and he did, and he called me back and he said, we love what you're doing, but we just can't take the risk that, you're a startup and we've never heard of, like, nobody's ever done anything like this before. So it's just so risky that we can't take this on. And so then he guided me to a really small person that pretty much worked with startups. He had a tiny company, and he had, they told me that he had the equipment needed to do this. So I called him, started working with him. And that was probably another year that I would create the product, send it to him. He would try it. It didn't work, back and forth, back and forth. And finally, he said, I think we're good to go. I think this product's going to work. I found it. He mailed me the product. I was so excited. And I opened it, and it was like so thick. And I called him and I said, John, this is never going to work. He's like, well, people can thin it down. I'm like, it has to go into hospitals. They can't contaminate the product. Are you kidding me? And so that was off the table. And so then I called the original manufacturer back, and I talked to the same person. Thankfully, he was still there. And I said, do you remember me? This is my story. And I said, the guy you sent me to, I just wasted, however, a year, 18 months, I don't know what it was, of my life working on this person that you sent me to, and he can't do it. You have to do this for me. Like, you have to do this. I'm not going to take no for an answer. And what do I have to do to make this happen? And so he talked to his team, and he said, okay, we'll take you on. And, under the conditions that I prepaid for the production shipments, like for the, they would do a certain amount of runs. So they had a minimum amount of production runs, which was really, really low for me. They set the bar really low. And I think they also thought that I was just going to be one of those companies that came and went. And, but they felt, I believe, sorry for me because, I was desperate. My father was dying. And so anyway, that's how it started. And they, we continued to work with them. And we had, by this time I sold the company to huge manufacturers. So it really was, they did pretty well for themselves in taking me on as a risk client, for sure.
Absolutely. I think I've met a couple of those guys at a trade show. So they were very, very happy that they stuck with you. Absolutely. Yep. What I heard a lot of and witnessed firsthand was a lot of intuition, a lot of intuitiveness, a lot of guts, a lot of risk taking. All those things that we hear are synonymous with being an entrepreneur. But I also see outside of that was a commitment to creating a product of quality. Mm-hmm. And in this day and time and in business, the bottom line often is the focal point, but not for you. Your focal point was the people you were going to serve and offering them a clean, nutritionally dense product as much as possible. So can you speak to the value for an entrepreneur and a company to maintain quality and their integrity and because over profit?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. And as you know, I never worried about the money. Mm-hmm. And we were mindful of it. We had meetings every week to, kind of see where we were financially. But because I didn't create the company in order to make money, I created the product in order to help people. Right. That was not my focus. Obviously, I had to be conscious of it because we needed to pay our bills and make payroll. But and Brian, my husband, who worked along with us, as you know, basically called it the quality of life index. So instead of looking at financial gain and look at the chart, in our monthly meetings, of our sales meetings, it was like, this is the quality of life this month. This is how many people we're helping this month. Yes. So for me, that's of the utmost importance. But I believe that because we were doing something that we felt was truly going to make a difference in people's lives. And, we were very fortunate. We had a lot of, as I told Andy this morning, people showed up when I need them to show up. We had a lot of help along the way. And, but because we kept the integrity of the product and because we refused to basically compromise the quality, even though, there were times when our manufacturers were offering us inferior, what I believed were inferior raw ingredients, perhaps from China, or not that I'm not equating China with inferior ingredients, but there are cheaper ingredients than we were paying to have these beautiful organic growers in the United States. But the thing of it is I knew the quality, and I had personal contact. I found all of our raw ingredient suppliers through a broker, but I maintained such a relationship with them. Even from the beginning, when I first called them and they heard my story, they would bend over backwards to help me. So I think that the difference, coming at it from this perspective as I did, it is, it's not about creating the product because you think it's going to be successful. Then you put the pieces. It's not the formula to set up a business and launch the business. This was a completely different animal.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I heard you mentioned several resources that you reached out to, manufacturers, a broker to help you with find the organic farmers. And also, I had the pleasure of meeting some of your investors. And so along the way, you established wonderful relationships with the manufacturers, the farmers, your broker. And tell us a little bit, share a little bit about your relationship with your investors and how that relationship developed. For those entrepreneurs who are seeking investors, it's not just people giving you money, but they have a belief in you.
Right, exactly. Yeah, all of our investors ended up being, and I didn't go looking for them. As I told Andy this morning, we had a number of people wanting to invest in the business. I had letters from customers who would write me letters wanting to invest in the business, but I didn't really need it early on, and I really didn't need it when we took them on as investors. We were growing, we were going international, we were in clinical trials. I knew there might be a point in time that we needed, to have a cushion. So, but when there were, once people found out about it, there was a friend of mine who's a neurosurgeon who had followed my journey. I met him in Cincinnati in Accelerator, and he basically told one of his patients' husband about our formula because she was struggling after surgery, brain surgery, and but she didn't use it as a feeding tube. She used it orally and as a smoothie every morning. So her husband became passionate about the product. He started telling all of his friends about it. They could use it as a smoothie just for basically,
nutrition.
Yeah, for breakfast every morning. And so he really wanted to know if we were looking for investors. And finally I said, sure. And so then he brought in, a couple of his friends who I also had met. And then I had a couple of personal friends. One woman in particular, when I was still working, I used to do private chef work, and she was one of my private chef clients. She was with me on this journey. With my dad was sick at the time. I was working for her, but I was, basically after a couple years after my dad's injury, I needed to get some work, so I started doing private chef again. And I would talk to her, and she basically said, I'd love to invest in your business. And she invested, and I took her investment really early on, ever before I even had a business plan. And I sat on her. It was quite a substantial amount of money. I sat on that. She got no return on it for years, literally. And so she got a nice return when we exited the business. Yeah. But every investor, we had, as a holiday party every year. They would come to our parties. We would go, have dinner with them. So they were much more than investors. They became part of our extended family.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's quite remarkable, to have built that relationship with those not only invested their money, but they believed in you and their time and their commitment to see you all the way through the journey, even to the exit. When we talked about, when you were mentioning how the people, when you brought the product to market, that were the manufacturers, you also had to introduce your product to the industry, to the nutritional industry. And I remember having lots of naysayers, even at the time when I came on board, but juxtaposed to the people who were actually taking the product, they were just amazed. It saved their lives. I would hear people tell me everywhere I went that it saved their life, saved their loved one's life or their child's life. It was an answer to their prayer to tell you that they thank you so much. I would be in airports, trade shows, restaurants, wherever people would ask me about what I was doing traveling. And I told them sometimes I would meet these people that used your product in the middle of the air, sitting on an airplane. That was amazing to me. And they would be in tears. So, but from the standpoint of those in the industry who weren't believers, can you share how you overcame that obstacle and how maybe an entrepreneur who's introducing something new that's never been done before in the industry, that's very innovative, because I put you up there with the rest of the innovators and inventors in the city of Dayton in this space. But tell me how you overcame those obstacles of naysayers.
I just kept plowing through, actually. I mean, even from the very beginning, I remember a conversation that I had with a registered dietitian. It was one of my early customers when I was still doing the business all by myself. And the person wanted to use the product. Her RD insisted on calling me and talking to me directly, which I was happy to talk to anybody. And, this woman basically said to me, you can't give patients real food through a feeding tube. You're going to kill them. And I'm like, no, but what I had found in all of my research, which was really very well buried, is before Nestle and Abbott Nutrition got a hold of the enteral nutrition market 50, 60 years ago, however long it's been that they've been offering the sugar water to patients. It was standard practice for hospitals and long-term care facilities to make their own feeding tube formulas in their kitchen. So then I finally was able, and again, this person showed up at the right time very early on at a trade show that I was talking to her, and she edited the handbook of nutrition that they use in university and registered dietetic programs. And she came up to me and said, I just wanted to meet you. Basically, I'm the editor of this book, and we're getting ready to launch the whatever edition this was. And she basically said, the fact that long-term care facilities and hospitals used to make their own feeding tube formulas for patients had been taken out of the dietetic book that students were being taught because, I have my own theories why. But so what she said to me was, we're going to put it back in the textbooks now. So, I mean, that was, I don't remember what your question was, but.
You answered it. Overcoming that obstacle was actually educating people about your product.
Right. Okay. So the other part of that is that research, like, as you know, everything that we did, we had scientific research to back it up. We never made false claims, and we never even published the claims that people were telling us, as you know, because we couldn't, it's making claims. They don't consider that to be clinical, proof or whatever, which is fine. But we had to make sure, because of the industry that we were in and the severity of the patients that we worked with, literally life and death,
yes,
in many, many cases, that we had to have our facts straight. We had to have integrity. We had to tell the truth and everything. We didn't make things up. We didn't need to make things up. We had the greatest stories from around the entire world. It was pretty much a marketer's dream that people would pay, millions of dollars for a marketing campaign that we did no marketing, as you know. I mean, we became a multi-million dollar business with no marketing, all by word of mouth and social media and trade shows. That's all we did. Yeah.
Absolutely. I have the Delta miles to prove some of that.
Yes, you do.
So, and was happy to do so. When we talk about the people that use your product, because we're talking about the product, but for you, it was all, and we never use terms like end user. We never used terms like our customer. We didn't use that. You had a special name for them, and they were your people of hope. That's right. And your father was front and center as the genesis of all of this long journey. And we had a wall with their pictures on. How important was that to you when you had to overcome obstacles and frustrations to know that that was the ultimate mission?
It's what kept me getting up every day, honestly. I mean, it just to know the difference that we were making, and there was no other option for these people. So for me, it was a labor of love, a true labor of love from the beginning to the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you talked about, you mentioned about the anecdotal, but eventually Functional Formularies, Liquid Hope and Nourish was the theme of much research over time. So not only did you revolutionize it, as in your product became the gold standard, it also spearheaded and started a whole new form of research. And now in Johns Hopkins, Kaiser, Vanderbilt, Harvard. So can you say how that felt to go from you're going to kill people to you're another?
All right. Well, obviously it was gratifying that I knew that I hopefully wasn't going to kill people. Yeah. But, for me, because it was such a long road and I fought, so much, so hard and on so many fronts along the way, I was happy that what I knew and what I had seen was being proven out in the clinical trials. But also a part of me was like, I could have told you that. I mean, but obviously that's not, and you have to have the science to back it up. But and what we saw over and over again, the clinical trials did prove everything that I had experienced with my father, that patient experienced. So that was definitely very gratifying.
I know, and I remember when the studies came out, we would do the happy dance, as we did when we got the, the testimonies from the people of hope that they shared in the videos, and we cried. But to have that evidence, and I remember the conference that they debuted some of the evidence, from that was a huge win and solidified your company from going from a kitchen recipe. Come on, Robin, from a kitchen recipe to a global product. So a lot of entrepreneurs, they want global reach, right? They want to make a huge impact, and especially in the space that you're in, as far as with the Entrepreneur Center, they're placing us in this medtech type of category. That whole validation to have, but that global reach didn't come overnight, So I witnessed the success going into Canada and Australia, but that was a journey. Was it not? Getting into that market, what is some of the challenges going global or having going into?
Yeah, regulatory issues mostly. We obviously could sell direct to consumer in most of the countries that we sold into. But if we wanted to launch onto the market, and get into the medical facilities, as we were in the United States, then there was a ton of compliance issues. And what we started doing was tackling each country where our largest number of sales were to try and move through that. So Canada was the first one, but I believe it took us over a year and a half to get to make sure to go through all the compliance, all the legal work, all of the trademark protections and everything else. It was a very, very long and a very expensive road. However, it was very worth it. Yes. And when I exited the company, we were working on Australia, which was the next largest country that we were getting into. That said, we were, as I said, allowed to sell direct to customers. And I think we were selling into at least 7 countries direct when I exited.
That is amazing. So not only within the United States and the industry here, but your product had a global impact on the lives and the health of people that took your products. That's amazing. Speaking of protecting yourself and your trademarks and all of that, I know you had issues with people literally ripping you off, and copycatting. And from sharing from the perspective of people protecting themselves, entrepreneurs protecting themselves, can you shed some light on the importance of doing so?
Oh, yes. Which, for me, it was a hard lesson learned. And I think, obviously, the entire journey from the beginning to the end, to the exit, was hard lessons learned for me personally. But early on, I had a woman who came to me, even before I launched the product on the market. We were right before launch. And she had heard whatever, knew that I was getting ready to launch this product. So she sent me an email. She had a son on a feeding tube, wanted to, had tons of questions about the product. And I wanted to make her feel comfortable. And I wanted, I trusted people. Yeah. So I pretty much gave her the keys to the kingdom, including this very well-kept secret process that took me years to figure out what that was. And stripped me off in that respect. She came to me pretending to be a potential customer. She was not. She came to me in order to get the information, and I gave it to her. And so that experience, it really interrupted my faith in humanity for a minute. I got a dark glimpse into what I was in for. And that continued, even with multinational companies not wanting us on the market. I don't know that there is a way to avoid that, but my advice, I guess, would be don't be as trusting as I was, because that was a foolish thing for me to do.
I wouldn't say necessarily foolish. I think that you had the intention that you wanted her to be assured that your product would not harm her child.
True.
Who was in need. And so, but just to protect yourself, protect your intellectual property, to be able to know that you put in the work and the research. And so therefore you want to reap the benefits from that. Absolutely. And being a person and a CEO of integrity and a founder that built a company on integrity, that allowed you to recruit employees and team members that had buy-in.
Absolutely.
Willing to work hard, promote your product. We didn't have to sell it. You just had to tell people, educate people what the product was. But to be and in front of as many people as we possibly could to tell them about functional formularies, whether out front or on the back end. How valuable is a team with buy-in for a product in the space such as yours or any beginning entrepreneur? And is
It's
it
everything.
develop? Yeah.
It's everything. I mean, I can't imagine. I don't think that we would have been near as successful as we were, not from a work ethic, show up place, but from they, as you did, people believed so strongly in this product because they're the ones opening the emails and seeing and getting these videos. And if you were a person with any kind of compassion or love for humanity, it couldn't help touch you. And it did, everyone that we worked with. There were many times people would come in my office and just in tears because somebody had called with a story or a photo of this child had been sent with the story. I mean, it was, but that passion or the belief that we were making a difference in the world, I believe then presented itself to, whoever you were out meeting with or talking to, salespeople or trade shows or whatever. And as you know, even quote salespeople, we never considered them salespeople. We called them educators because, as you said, once people understood the product, it sold itself. No one had to sell it.
No, you even had brand ambassadors. They weren't on payroll. They had full-time jobs as RDs, but they were willing to do the same for you.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
All angels, all of them.
I'm enjoying myself, but I know throughout our conversations that we had over the years, you were very aware that you wanted of your position as CEO and a founder. And outside of the work that you were doing as far as a product, you also committed to educating people about nutrition. That was almost equally as important. And so we offered that webinars and information on our website, on our blogs, and on our Facebook about nutrition, how important that was, like parallel to your mission.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, number one, it had to do with making people feel comfortable with the efficacy of the product.
Yes.
And number two, we believed, and I believe to this day, it's once people understand the difference in nutrition, the ingredients, it's a game changer for everyone. It really is. And that was the platform that we worked from because we were doing something that, was sometimes being picked apart or trying to be picked apart by the powers that be that didn't want to see us on the market, as well as many registered dietitians who just felt that sugar is sugar is sugar. You know what I mean? So we had to do that. We would have done it no matter what, but because I think that we had to prove the science behind the product, we continuously educated our customer base.
I know you had some big names in industry that would slide into those webinars, name no names, but as a CEO and a founder of such a product that had great integrity, you also wanted to be considered a conscious company. And that was very important to you. And so if you could just leave a thought with our entrepreneurs that are watching and they're getting ready to embark on this journey like you did, and you were successful. You created a company, not just a product, but a company, and you exited profitably. But at the same time, you maintained that. And so if you we're not going to judge anyone. We're not judging. But what I'm saying is for them to have something to, when the rubber meets the road, to hold on to, like you did in times.
So, I mean, just, you have to believe in yourself and believe in your product, right? I mean, that would be my, probably my biggest takeaway from this is, I forget, it was Simon Sinek that said people buy what you believe, not what you're selling, or something like that. But you, pardon me?
They buy your why. I have that book. Start with your why.
Right. Yes. Start with why. Why are you doing this, right? Yes. And that's the question. Why are you doing this? Are you doing this because you want to, make millions? That's great.
Yes.
So go about doing that, but never lose perspective on why, and never lose your passion. I mean, I think that every entrepreneur has a passion, and then, an incredible amount of drive. It takes that to launch a product, launch a business. But you have to continue to believe in yourself and surround yourself with good people, and never let anybody tell you can't do something, because you can do anything that you set your mind and heart to do.
That's so true and amazing. And I always told you, girl, if you never do anything else, you did this. So, right. and it's such a wonderful legacy. And all of those components that we talked about today are a part of that legacy, in addition to the amazing products, the life-changing products that you created. Can you tell us, after the exit of your company, what are you doing with your time? What are you doing with your retirement?
Well, I'm still playing the organic. We've taken a couple years off just to try and catch our breath and heal ourselves mentally and emotionally and, physically. But we're looking at organic farming now. And so we just hired a farm manager to start dabbling in some organic farming in Ohio. And we spend time in Vermont, which is where I'm at right now. And so we hope to be able to do the same thing. So it's kind of the same thing, doing what I can to try and nurture the earth that's so important to us.
Absolutely. I know it's important to you to always contribute to the greater good. So I've enjoyed my time with you. I hope this is beneficial to entrepreneurs who are listening. I think it's more to being a founder or a CEO or a business owner than just strategies. I think it takes heart and guts.
Thank you. And thank you for taking the time and for the interview. And I hope to see you and be able to give you a big hug one of these days again.
I know. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night. Bye-bye. With Robin Gentry McGee, the founder and the former CEO of Functional Formularies. I hope you were able to gather some wonderful nuggets. She really shared, I think, out of the abundance of her heart about her company that she was so passionate about and is still so passionate about. Thank you for extending the time to join us for our Q&A. So, Robin, we have some great questions. Are you ready to go and dig into these? So our first question, and how are you today? I didn't even ask. Good. Robin, did you check your mute? I wasn't able to hear. Okay. We want everyone to be able to.
There we go. How's that? Sorry.
Yeah, we are great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Our first question. As a woman entrepreneur, what were or are some of your best practices for self-care and balance while starting, running, and scaling a business and juggling your personal life?
When I first started, it was pretty easy because I was working by myself for the first year, probably. And I made time for myself. And I had a workout routine. I did yoga frequently. I was really good at self-care. But as the business grew, I basically let that go by the wayside just because the business began to take more and more time. And I honestly, I wasn't able to do that. And that is the main reason that I stepped out of the company, because I had been on such a long journey for so many years. And I knew that my health was was being affected, and that was a mistake. And I really didn't utilize the tools that I knew. I mean, I knew how to take care of myself. I'd been doing it for many, many years, but my focus was so much on the company. We were growing so rapidly. And as you know, Pam, we never had enough help.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was really hard to do. And that was a mistake, honestly.
And I appreciate you accepting that and acknowledging that that was a mistake. But when you're in the mix of creating a product such as yours, that is probably common. And there were times when you were really pushing for us to take care of ourselves. So it wasn't necessarily out of being negligent, being negligent, but it was out of, you only have 24 hours in a day. We're all given the same amount of time. So I think for what we were trying to accomplish and what you were trying to accomplish, it was one of the cost, unfortunately, with having such a successful business. So not being your defender, but being someone that witnessed that, I can contribute to that. The other question was, and which kind of is parallel to that one, women sometimes have challenges asking for help. Did you experience that? If so, how did you overcome not asking for help so that your business could grow?
Fortunately, I did not have that issue. I had to have help, stepping into the industry that I knew nothing about. And there were so many facets of it, as far as food manufacturing, organic raw ingredient supply, FDA medical, shipping, receiving, warehousing. I knew nothing about so many of the areas that I was finding myself in the middle of, that I had to have help. And so, I got really, really good, as you probably know, Pam, at asking for help.
Yeah.
But it's very important to be able to put yourself out there and do that, because what I always felt is the worst thing that can happen is someone will tell you no, or will not be able to offer you the help that you're looking for. And when I hit roadblocks, I was always mindful of my belief, which is that you're just not asking the right person or going down the right road. Like, don't give up, because there is an answer, but it may not be found where you start looking.
That's wonderful advice, because sometimes you have the idea or you have a certain talent, but you cannot say that you have every knowledge of and talent to run a business across the entire spectrum. That is just, I would say, unrealistic. So being able to ask and recognize that, ask people for help, surround yourself with smart people, and to research for the answer is very, very smart. So I know our entrepreneurs who feel that way are happy that you shared that. Can you speak with the decision to sell your company and your experience with seeing the company's next steps without your direct involvement?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very gut-wrenching, difficult decision to sell the company. Mm-hmm. And, I hung on to it, well over a year after I started thinking about, really feeling that it was time to step away from it. And we first went down the road of thinking about replacing myself as CEO and stepping away from the company. But at the end of the day, I've owned enough businesses to understand if you own a business, you always own that business. There's no stepping away from it in reality. So it was very necessary for me to do that. It was a really hard decision because I was so attached to the product, and there was such an emotional attachment for me. And the exit, I won't say that it was a bad decision, but if I had things to do over again, I would have made a different decision. And it is difficult to kind of watch from the sidelines and not participate, or or even being given the opportunity to be involved in the direction of the company. That's hard for me, but obviously, if you sell a company, many times people do not cut the ties. Sometimes it's necessary, but for me, there was such an attachment. It was like, I don't have children, but I would imagine it would be like putting your kid up for adoption. That's how hard it was for me.
Absolutely. I witnessed that. And so thank you for being so transparent in that part of it, that it's not just as easy as I'm exiting the company. I have this profit and it's cut and dry. It's not that, not at all. So one person wanted to know, how did you transition from the role into CEO, from founder and creator? So running the company from the ideation to being the head of the company.
It was necessary when because I was on my own for a year, and then I started hiring employees. Mm-hmm. But by the time I got to launching the product in 2013, there was a very long road of hands-on learning since 2005, when my dad had his accident. So I was very well equipped to step into the CEO role when I needed to, because we did look around early on for C-level, and I couldn't find anybody that had experience in all of the spaces that we played in, which was about 5. Mm-hmm. And I had in-depth knowledge by 2013, so it was just a natural transition for me.
Absolutely. We're getting so many comments about thank you for sharing your story, your inspirational story. So it's very inspiring to a lot of young entrepreneurs. Mm-hmm. We also have the question, do you have any plans to start another company or become more involved in other entrepreneur ventures locally?
Absolutely. I'm very excited about that. We sold the company in November of 2018, and I've taken a lot of time to heal, honestly, emotionally, physically, just to try and step away from the burnout factor. And I think I'm there. So, we're looking, we have a farm in the Wilmington area, and we're looking at doing some organic farming there. I actually had a soup line that Dorothy Lane Market co-packed during the time that I had the business, and it was the medicinal soup line, which was wonderful, but I had to step out of that because we were so consumed with Functional Formularies. So I'd like to relaunch the soup line because it sold very well, and it was really a great line, very different from anything that's on the market. And I am passionate about supporting entrepreneurs, whether, in whatever capacity that may look like. And, as you know, Pam, I recently encouraged Aviatra Accelerators to come to Dayton and funded the first 12 months of that program. That was a program that I went through when I was trying to figure out how to get my product on the market. It was at that time called Bad Girl Ventures in Cincinnati. So, and you started the first cohort. And so, you came, I called you, like I knew you would be the perfect person for the job. And I'm so excited to see how women move through the program and to help them. And so, so to all of those things, yes.
Absolutely. I know your whole philosophy and goal is to always add and contribute to the greater good. And so you are doing that. Happy to hear that the soups are coming back. I know organic lifestyle, that's your lifestyle. So I'm not surprised about the organic farming. And I can tell you as a director for Aviatra Dayton that the women are so inspired and they're so grateful for this opportunity to be in the region. And so, again, seeing the need, it's a great extension. So thank you, Robin, for your transparency. Thank you for sharing with so many entrepreneurs. I know that they are benefiting from your wisdom and your openness to share.
Thank you so much. It's my pleasure.
Thank you. Continued success.
Thank you, Pam.
Well, thank you all so very much for joining this conversation with Pam and Robin. Hope you guys enjoy her story and just hearing her journey in entrepreneurship as a CEO of a medtech company and a woman breaking into an industry that is male dominated. Hopefully it gave you some inspiration and some tips to take with you into your businesses. So thank you, ladies, for that amazing conversation. We are going to break for lunch, and we would like to invite you all to join us for our 1 p.m. Session on social media and digital marketing 101. So enjoy, and please support our local businesses for lunch, which you can find in the banner in your app. Thank you again, and we'll see you soon. Bye-bye.